Hello, this is Silas, and this is going to be another entry in my Hands Up, Don't Hit series. In this series, I'm going to be discussing child abuse in different forms. Not just the corporal punishment of you just physically hitting your kids with your hands or other implements, but going also into different forms of mental abuse like neglect and the things like that. It's kind of odd that in some societies people will say, okay, that's not it. If you're not hitting the kid, you're not abusing the kid. But you also have that similar society, that similar culture, or other people in that culture, even though I might not completely agree with this description of it, but people will say something like, somebody can write something online that you will never actually read or see, or not even intended directly to you, but somebody will consider that to be assault of some other group of people. They'll take this nebulous thing and say, this person X, who I don't even know, said this online in this place where I just happen to be, and then all of a sudden these group of people that haven't even read it or seen it have been assaulted by this. They will claim that's assault, but then they say, okay, when it comes to child abuse, as long as you're not hitting your kid, it is not abuse. No, those two things don't go together. There are other forms of abuse outside of just physically hitting. But this entry that I'm going to go into is something that a friend of mine shared with me a few years back. And it's taken a while for me to come around to doing this, but I asked him about this and I said, can I share this? Can I make a video about this and share it with people? I told him a bit about this Hands Up, Don't Hit series I was going to do. And he said, yeah, go ahead and do it. So I'm going to read through what he wrote and also let you know some of my thoughts about it as we go through it. And we have somewhat of a similar background in that we both have lived in the United States of America and in cultures outside of the United States of America where hitting children, physically hitting children, is a lot more accepted, socially acceptable. It's not as taboo. It is my hope through technology and videos like this that something can be done. So he opens up by saying, in 1987, Norway, like its neighbors Finland in 1983 and Sweden in 1979, were among the first countries in the world to place an explicit legal ban on all forms of corporal punishment of children. There are currently 48 countries, 28 of them classified as developed or high income by the World Bank and United Nations respectively, with such laws. So this first one is just talking about where it's illegal, like the police or somebody can be called if you hit your kid. So this is already to me is a very big difference in some places I've seen. And this may be true in some places in the United States of America, but there are some occasions where I actually recall people being hit in public. I remember coming back to Kenya. I was about a year back and I was in the grocery store. I was in a supermarket and I saw some kid being hit. And this was after my own journey with peaceful parenting. And it really gave me pause. I felt like I should go up and say something to the father or stop him or something. But hitting kids in public is still a thing that's done in certain cultures. But here, in these few countries here, in these, okay, not few countries, there are 48 countries at the time of that my friend wrote this that have it illegal where you can actually be arrested for it. And that's something I'm not pro state, pro the statism thing. I'd rather people do this voluntarily. But if it's a situation where somebody's coming to protect the children from being hit, this is something I can get behind. So we'll continue. So far from sinking into disorder, Norway is ranked number 1 in the United Nations Human Development Index, the HDI, a measure of global living standards. 11 of the top 20 nations topping the HDI charts forbid corporal punishments. So this is just showing that yes, the top 11 of those countries in the HDI, as I said, this is done a while back, some few years back when I got this. It might be different now, and some countries may have added it. So back to the piece that he wrote. Moreover, Norway is among the top 20 of the Institute of Economic Peace's Global Peace Index. The top 5 and 11 of the top 20 on this list of countries have already banned corporal punishments. Shall continue. I am not a statistician, and as they're apt to say that correlation does not imply causation, it's nonetheless striking to me that the majority of the safest and most socially and economically prosperous nations in which hitting children is not even socially discouraged, but for longer than have existed in some, a crime. Okay, I like the point that he pointed out here at the end, saying that there's some countries where for longer than he's been alive. Like for me, I was born in 1983, so when I saw that when it was up there with saying that, I think it was Finland, yeah, Finland in 1983, they made it illegal. So you have situations where I know it doesn't mean just because there's a God, people are going to stop being evil, or just because there's a state, people are going to stop being evil, stop committing crimes, stop breaking these things. I know that the laws and the gods don't necessarily establish these ethics. But for you to have a law like this, I think it's already a society that's going towards this way, and then the law codifies what's already in the culture, in the society. So you have entire groups of people where for there's generations of people that have not been hit. What is the mentality of those kids if to physical violence, to that kind of altercation, to escalating something, a disagreement to physical violence, if you have an entire generation that hasn't been hit, and then you have other locations where there are people who have. I think even if you go within the same race, people don't want to say there might be race things in there. Take a white person, hit them as they grow up. Take a white person, treat them peacefully as they grow up, and those people will end up differently. So going back to what he wrote now. So in an interview in the weeks leading up to the general election earlier this year, the then Prime Minister and leader of the People's National Party, PNP, Portia Simpson Miller, a 70-year-old and married with no children, called the 43-year-old leader of the opposing Jamaica Labour Party, JLP, Andrew Holness, her son, but added that every once in a while a child needs a good beating. Even more so than George W. Bush was in America, she was often derided for her lack of eloquence or competency, particularly by a more educated Jamaica. So this is just he's talking about someone at a high level. This is a matriarchal sort of the Jamaican government. Now you have a government official at this level, at that high of a level, calling somebody out, an opposition party member. I'm just thinking of, imagine someone like Donald Trump going in and saying this about maybe a younger female member of the Democrat Party and saying, "Oh, this is my daughter, and sometimes you need to get spanked." People would lose their minds. So I do understand there's some cultures, some societies, this whole idea that cultures are the same, people are the same. No, this is the rhetoric that's going on in politics in Jamaica. And then you look at the actual crime rates, you look at some of the dysfunctions that are happening in Jamaican society, and they may have something to do with this kind of acceptance. If these are the leaders, these are the people that you're looking up to. Okay, back to what he wrote. When I see that most of the world's most modern, peaceful, and prosperous nations have moved both in culture and law away from beatings and other physical punishment in dealing with their children, but even the leader of my country is still promoting such measures, I feel shame. I feel ashamed of my parents for defending and promoting such brutish, backward behavior. I feel shame at my extended family, most of my countrymen, and even our leaders for doing the same. I feel ashamed of my culture. I feel ashamed of my country, and most importantly, I feel ashamed of myself, for until recently defending what was done to me, advocating the same for others, and barring the intervention and change in stance I gained from therapy, that I would probably have continued the cycle with my children. So this really endeared me to what he had written. And I can relate to this too for having times in the past. I mean, I haven't been to therapy yet, probably have that in the near future. But doing a lot of self thought and pursuing self knowledge and reading up on peaceful parenting and the effects of it, and talking to people and sharing this with people and trying to find different ways to parent and different ways to interact with children, I have seen the error in my ways. And you see how much that affects you that you can actually defend this, where it gets to the point where now I just find it a completely indefensible thing, but still can recall that person that could actually defend these, that could say, yes, I'm going to hit my kids, but I'm going to make sure they understand why I'm hitting them. And that simple thing, if you can explain to them why they're about to be hit, you could probably explain to them why what they did was wrong without you having to hit them. When it comes down to it, this hitting thing is mostly for the person hitting, not for the child. The child won't understand it as anything but violence, but they will adjust to it and try to take that into account to their life, to their livelihood, to what they're doing, to how they survive. So This is something that I think a lot of people should understand. A lot of people should think about these cultures and these other people that they say, oh, we have pride, we have pride in this culture, we have pride in these things, that these positive things that have come from it. But you also have to realize once you take that group pride kind of thing, you also take the group shame. You can't have one without the other. If you are proud of one culture and you feel you're a part of that culture, and that culture also has negative things in a part of it, you should own those, be aware of those things, and then try to see, okay, those positive things, do they exist because of these negative things? If they are these positive things in spite of these negative things, how much better could this culture be if you took out those negative things? So that's it for now. The sketch that was going on and the drawing that was going on the screen was for the Hands Up Don't Hit series. There's going to be merchandise for that. You can buy shirts and other merchandise with this kid holding up his hands. This is just a play on the Hands Up Don't Shoot thing with the Black Lives Matter thing, what is based off of the Michael Brown incident that was found to not be true, that he never put his hands up, but they still use this. So I want to kind of do a double play on this, where it's like, look, this is how the kids are. The kids have their hands up to you. They say, what have I done wrong? They have their hands up. Don't hit them when they're in this position. The angle with it also, you're that much bigger than them. The size discrepancy, the power discrepancy in this relationship is inexcusable for you to hit your children. It is not okay. Don't do it. Stop doing it. So I'm going to try to get these things into more of a conducive or a more I'll collect these stories together. If you have personal stories of your own that you would like to share, that you wouldn't mind me reading out, you can also send those to me. There'll also be links below to a place where you can send it to me, and I can read this out, because I just want to get this message out in my own way. I have some personal stories, I have some personal conversations that I'll be getting into this, but if you want to share your own story or your own debates and your own arguments and your own points of view on this, please let me know. Please share them with me, and I'll share them with the rest of the people out there. I think these are the people that we can all agree need the most protection in the world, is children. Okay, that's it for now. Like, share, and subscribe. Till next video, goodbye.